Keanu Reeves had always been known for his calm, humble nature. He was a man who spoke softly, yet his words carried weight. People admired him not only for his work on the screen but also for the kindness he showed in real life. Despite being a world-famous actor, he avoided unnecessary attention and lived much of his life quietly, away from the flashing cameras and loud headlines. He was a person who made people feel seen, even in the busiest of crowds, and his reputation for generosity was known among those who had worked closely with him. One bright morning, Keanu walked into the studio of a popular television show. The set was buzzing with activity as cameras were being adjusted and the crew prepared for the live broadcast. Fans had gathered outside, cheering and waving, hoping for even a glimpse of the actor who had become a symbol of humility and sincerity. Inside, the atmosphere was filled with excitement and anticipation. The host of the show, a well-known figure in the media, greeted Keanu warmly. They shook hands, and for a moment, the hum of the studio seemed to quiet as if acknowledging the presence of someone extraordinary. The interview began in a normal, expected way. The host asked about Keanu's latest movie, his thoughts on acting, and the challenges he faced while preparing for the role. Keanu answered with his usual calmness, speaking thoughtfully about the craft of acting. He explained how he connected with his character, how he prepared for difficult scenes, and how he often observed people around him to understand emotions better. His answers were honest, simple, and sincere, capturing the attention of both the live audience and viewers at home. People loved listening to him because his words felt real, there was no pretension, no attempt to impress. Then, something unexpected happened. The host, sensing an opportunity for a surprising moment, leaned forward and asked a question that no one in the audience expected. "Keanu," the host said, "you've met so many people in your life. Have you ever met someone who completely changed the way you see the world?" The question seemed innocent enough, but it carried a weight. It was a question about personal experiences, about moments that could reveal sides of Keanu that the public had never seen. Keanu paused. For a few seconds, he didn't answer, and the silence in the studio grew noticeable. The audience leaned forward in their seats, curious about what he would say. His eyes seemed to drift slightly as if he were remembering something from the past, a memory that was private and meaningful. He was never one to speak lightly about his personal life, so the hesitation made everyone even more curious. The cameras captured the quiet moment, and the tension in the room was gentle but real. Finally, Keanu spoke. His voice was soft but steady, carrying a calmness that made people listen closely. He began to share a story about a meeting that had left a deep impact on him, something he had not spoken about publicly before. "There was a time," he said slowly, "when I met someone who showed me a kind of humility and care that is very rare in the world. It was unexpected, and it changed the way I thought about people who lead others." His words were careful, measured, and full of respect. The audience leaned in, sensing that a meaningful story was about to unfold. Keanu described the setting of the meeting in detail. It was a quiet room in a large building, with sunlight streaming through tall windows. There were flowers in the corner, and the atmosphere was peaceful. The person he was about to describe was not someone he knew personally at first, but someone whose actions had left a lasting impression. Keanu spoke about the warmth in the person's smile, the softness in their voice, and the genuine interest they showed in every person they met. He painted a picture of a person who was not concerned with fame, power, or attention, but with understanding and helping others. As Keanu continued, the audience felt as if they were experiencing the moment with him. He described how the person had listened carefully to his words, how they had acknowledged his feelings, and how even small gestures of kindness made a huge difference. "It's rare to meet someone like that," Keanu said. "Someone who doesn't need recognition, someone who just quietly tries to make a difference. It's inspiring and humbling at the same time." His voice carried a sense of admiration, and people watching felt the sincerity in his words. The host, realizing the story was becoming more personal and meaningful than the usual interview topics, encouraged Keanu to continue. "What happened next?" they asked gently. Keanu smiled slightly and nodded, as if he had been waiting for permission to share the full story. He spoke of how the person had shared a few thoughts with him, ideas about life, kindness, and responsibility that were not just words but lessons that stayed with him. The actor explained that he had left the meeting feeling inspired and challenged to be a better person, not just in public but in everyday life. Keanu's way of telling the story was simple, yet it captivated everyone. There was no exaggeration, no drama, just the truth, told in a way that allowed people to feel the significance of the encounter. The live audience was quiet, absorbed in the narrative. Even the crew behind the cameras seemed to pause, listening to the story unfold. It was clear that this was not just a casual anecdote, it was a personal revelation that Keanu had decided to share with the world. As the story developed, it became clear that Keanu's experience was unusual for someone in the public eye. Most celebrities speak in rehearsed phrases or talk about their work, but Keanu was sharing something deeply personal, something that revealed his values and the way he saw the world. It was a rare glimpse into the heart of a man who had faced immense fame and pressure yet remained grounded, humble, and thoughtful. The host acknowledged the depth of the story, expressing surprise and admiration. "That's incredible," they said. "It's not often we get to hear something so personal and honest." Keanu nodded quietly, his calm demeanor unchanged. He did not seek praise, he only wanted to convey the significance of the experience. His focus was on the lesson he had learned, the humanity he had witnessed, and the inspiration it had given him to live with greater compassion and awareness. By the end of the segment, the mood in the studio had shifted. What started as a regular interview about movies had turned into a heartfelt moment that touched everyone present. People in the audience whispered to each other, some nodding, some smiling, and others appearing deeply moved. The story had a gentle power, showing how an unexpected question and a thoughtful response could create a moment of connection that felt real and meaningful. Even after the cameras stopped rolling, the energy of the story lingered. Crew members spoke quietly about how unusual it was to witness such authenticity on live television. Fans outside the studio, who had seen snippets online, shared their excitement and admiration. The story of Keanu Reeves, not as an actor but as a person who values kindness and integrity, spread quickly. People began discussing the importance of humility, the impact of genuine care, and how even small actions could leave a lasting impression. In that moment, Keanu reminded everyone that behind the public persona, there is always a private self, shaped by experiences, encounters, and lessons learned from others. His decision to share this story, in a calm and sincere way, reflected his belief that real influence comes not from fame or recognition, but from the quiet, meaningful ways people touch each other's lives. And in doing so, he created a connection with the audience that went beyond the usual interview format. It was personal, inspiring, and unforgettable. As the segment ended, the host thanked Keanu for sharing such a rare and meaningful story. Keanu smiled, thanked them in return, and left the studio quietly, just as he had arrived. There were no grand gestures, no fanfare, just a man who had shared a moment of truth, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who listened. Outside, the fans continued to cheer, but for those who had seen the story unfold, the real excitement was in the quiet power of honesty, humility, and human kindness. Keanu Reeves could not stop thinking about that meeting long after it had ended. It was not every day that someone he deeply admired left such a quiet but lasting impact on him. While he had met many famous and influential people over the years, this encounter felt different. There was something almost unexplainable about the warmth and sincerity he had experienced. It stayed with him, like a gentle reminder of what truly mattered in life. In the days that followed, Keanu found himself reflecting on the moments of the meeting. He remembered the way the person had listened attentively, nodding slightly, making him feel truly heard. That simple gesture, something most people might overlook, had left him feeling seen in a way few had ever managed. He realized how powerful genuine attention and care could be, and how it could touch someone's heart more than any grand gesture or public recognition. Keanu began to recall the details of the meeting in his mind. It had been a sunny afternoon, and he had arrived at the venue quietly, trying not to attract too much attention. The building itself was beautiful but understated, reflecting a sense of calm and order. Inside, the room where the meeting took place was simple yet welcoming. There were chairs neatly arranged, a few paintings on the walls, and sunlight streaming through the tall windows, creating a soft, peaceful glow. The atmosphere felt calm, safe, and genuine, unlike the busy, sometimes overwhelming world of Hollywood he was used to. When he first met the person, Keanu had been nervous. It was rare for him to meet someone of such significance in such a personal setting. But those nerves soon disappeared. The person's presence was calming, almost magnetic in a subtle way. They spoke softly, without hurry, making Keanu feel at ease. There was no need for pretense or show. Every word, every gesture seemed intentional and filled with quiet kindness. It was the kind of presence that made people naturally want to be better, not because of pressure, but because of inspiration. During their conversation, the person asked Keanu about his life, his experiences, and the challenges he had faced. But instead of focusing on fame or accomplishments, the discussion centered on values, empathy, and personal growth. Keanu found himself opening up about things he rarely shared publicly: the moments of struggle, the lessons learned, and the people who had helped him along the way. The conversation was not just polite small talk, it was real, thoughtful, and meaningful. As the meeting continued, the person shared their own thoughts on life. They spoke about the importance of helping others quietly, without expecting recognition or reward. They emphasized that true influence came not from being seen or praised, but from the way one treated others in private moments. Keanu listened carefully, realizing how unusual it was to hear such ideas from someone so prominent in the world. It was not just the words but the authenticity behind them that struck him. Every sentence seemed to carry weight, as if it had been lived and tested in real life, not just spoken as theory. At one point, the conversation took an unexpected turn. The person revealed a story about someone they had helped quietly, without anyone knowing. Keanu was surprised to hear such honesty, as many influential figures he had met often spoke in generalities or avoided revealing personal actions. But this story was specific, detailed, and touching. It was about someone whose life had been changed by a small but thoughtful act. Keanu felt a deep sense of admiration and humility. It reminded him that true kindness often goes unseen, but its impact can be profound. As the minutes passed, Keanu began to realize the significance of this encounter. It was not just a casual meeting with an influential figure, it was a lesson in humanity. The person's actions, words, and presence showed him that greatness was not measured by fame or power, but by the ability to inspire and help others quietly. Keanu reflected on how easy it was to get caught up in appearances, public image, and recognition. But this meeting reminded him that the most meaningful moments in life are often private and personal. After the conversation ended, Keanu left the room feeling deeply moved. He walked slowly through the quiet halls of the building, replaying the discussion in his mind. He remembered the way the person had smiled, the calm tone of their voice, and the subtle gestures that conveyed respect and care. Every detail felt important, as if it had been designed to teach him something valuable. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of clarity about what really mattered: humanity, empathy, and the small acts of kindness that ripple through life in unexpected ways. In the days that followed, Keanu shared bits of the experience only with close friends and family. He did not seek attention or recognition, the encounter was personal and sacred to him. But the lesson stayed with him, influencing the way he interacted with people in his daily life. He found himself being more attentive, patient, and understanding. He noticed small moments where he could make a difference, helping someone with directions, offering a comforting word, or simply listening carefully. The encounter had shifted something within him, creating a quiet but powerful change. Keanu also began to reflect on the courage it took for the person to act with such humility. In a world where so much is driven by publicity, recognition, and achievement, it was rare to see someone prioritize compassion over personal gain. Keanu realized that this courage was not loud or aggressive, it was quiet, steady, and consistent. It reminded him that the most profound leadership comes from example, not from authority or power. It was a lesson that would remain with him for the rest of his life. When the time came to appear in public again, Keanu felt a subtle difference in how he engaged with people. Fans noticed a certain calmness and depth in his demeanor, a warmth that seemed even more genuine than before. Those who worked with him observed his patience and attentiveness, realizing that the experience had shaped him in meaningful ways. Keanu himself noticed that he felt more grounded, less distracted by fame or external pressures, and more focused on the values that truly mattered to him. Eventually, Keanu made the decision to share part of this story publicly. He did not intend to make headlines or create a spectacle. He simply wanted to convey the essence of what he had learned, that true greatness is often quiet, and that kindness and empathy have the power to change lives in ways that recognition never could. When asked about influential figures in his life, he spoke honestly and thoughtfully, allowing his audience to glimpse the impact of the encounter without revealing private details. His words were simple but powerful, resonating with viewers around the world. The story, even in fragments, touched many people. Fans and strangers alike found inspiration in Keanu's reflections. Some were reminded of their own mentors and role models. Others considered the ways they could make a difference quietly, without seeking praise or attention. The impact of the meeting extended far beyond the room where it had taken place, reaching countless individuals who had been inspired by the message of humility and care. For Keanu, the meeting remained a turning point. It was more than just a memory, it was a guiding principle. He continued to live his life with the lessons in mind, finding small ways to embody the values he had witnessed. It shaped his approach to relationships, work, and personal challenges. Every interaction became an opportunity to practice empathy, to listen deeply, and to act with kindness, just as he had learned from that quiet but unforgettable encounter. As the days turned into months, Keanu often reflected on the meeting during quiet moments. Whether he was on set, traveling, or spending time with friends, the lessons stayed with him. He understood that moments like these, though private and subtle, could have a ripple effect that extended far beyond what one could see. And in recognizing the quiet power of humility, compassion, and empathy, he discovered a deeper sense of purpose and connection in his own life. Keanu Reeves had thought long and hard about whether he should share the full truth of that remarkable encounter. He knew the story was powerful, but it was also deeply personal. The experience had left a lasting mark on him, shaping not only the way he viewed the world, but the way he viewed himself. He remembered every detail: the gentle tone of the voice, the warm smile, and the quiet acts of kindness that had made the encounter unforgettable. Yet, there was one part of the meeting he had never shared publicly. It was something so extraordinary that it seemed almost unbelievable, even to him at times. The moment arrived during a live interview. Keanu sat comfortably, speaking with his usual calm and thoughtful demeanor. The host, sensing the depth of the story from previous conversations, encouraged him to continue. "Keanu," they said, "you've spoken about how certain people have influenced you. Can you share one of those experiences that really changed your life?" The question was simple, but the answer was far from ordinary. Keanu paused, taking a deep breath, as the studio waited in silence. He began to speak slowly, carefully choosing his words. "There was a time when I met someone whose actions completely surprised me," he said. "Someone who showed a kind of selflessness that I had never fully understood until that moment." The audience leaned in, sensing the importance of the story. Keanu's calm tone and sincere gaze made everyone pay close attention. There was no hype, no exaggeration, just honesty and reflection. He described the context of the meeting once again, reminding the audience of the quiet, serene environment where he had felt so welcomed. But this time, he focused on the personal connection he had felt with the individual. He spoke of how the person had listened intently, asking questions not out of curiosity, but out of genuine care. Every word, every gesture, had been thoughtful, deliberate, and meaningful. Keanu explained that it was this authenticity that had left the strongest impression on him, a feeling he had carried with him ever since. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, the revelation that had stayed with Keanu for so long. He leaned forward slightly, his voice steady but soft, and said, "During our conversation, I learned something about this person that completely shocked me. Something I never expected to hear or see." The studio grew quiet, the tension palpable. The audience and viewers at home felt that something extraordinary was about to be revealed. Keanu continued, describing how the person had quietly intervened in a situation that could have had serious consequences for someone close to him. It was an act that had gone entirely unnoticed by the public, performed without expectation of recognition or reward. The person had used their influence and position not to gain attention, but simply to help someone in need. Keanu's voice carried a mixture of awe and humility as he recounted the story. "I realized in that moment," he said, "that true greatness is often hidden. It doesn't seek applause. It just quietly makes a difference." He explained how this act had affected him personally. For years, Keanu had admired public figures for their accomplishments and visibility. But witnessing this quiet intervention changed his understanding of leadership and influence. He saw that real power lay not in being noticed, but in the courage to act with compassion, even when no one else would know. This realization stayed with him, shaping the way he interacted with others in his own life. The host of the show listened, captivated, occasionally nodding as if confirming the depth of Keanu's experience. "That's incredible," the host said. "It's rare to hear about such acts of quiet kindness from someone in a position of influence." Keanu smiled faintly, acknowledging the words, but he quickly returned to the story. He wanted the focus to remain on the lesson, not on admiration for the person who had acted so selflessly. Keanu then shared more about the personal impact of the event. He spoke of the relief and gratitude he felt for the person's intervention, how it had prevented a difficult situation from escalating. But more than that, he emphasized the emotional and moral lessons he had learned. He realized that kindness, humility, and empathy were qualities that could inspire others far more than grand gestures or public recognition. Every day, he found himself reflecting on the values he had witnessed, striving to apply them in small ways in his own life. The story resonated deeply with the audience. Many viewers could relate to the idea of unseen acts of kindness, moments where someone went out of their way to help without expecting anything in return. Keanu's words reminded them that influence was not about fame or popularity, but about the quiet, meaningful ways people could change lives. Social media and news outlets quickly picked up snippets of the interview, spreading the story to millions around the world. People praised the revelation, expressing admiration for both Keanu's honesty and the selfless act he had witnessed. As the interview continued, Keanu reflected on why he had chosen to share this story publicly. He explained that he wanted others to understand the impact of small, thoughtful actions. Often, people focus on what is visible, measurable, or rewarded, forgetting that the quiet, unseen efforts are just as, if not more, powerful. He hoped that by sharing the story, he could inspire others to act with compassion, even in ways that might never be recognized. The live audience was deeply moved. Some sat in silence, absorbing every word. Others whispered to their neighbors, amazed at the humility and generosity that had gone unnoticed for so long. Even the crew behind the cameras seemed affected, caught up in the sincerity of Keanu's account. The story felt timeless, a reminder that the most meaningful moments in life often happen away from the spotlight, in private, and with pure intention. Keanu described how this experience had influenced his perspective on fame and success. He realized that being famous did not make someone automatically wise or virtuous. True wisdom came from understanding others, from acting with integrity, and from using whatever influence one had to create positive change. It was a lesson he carried into every interaction, whether on set, in public, or in private life. This newfound clarity gave him a sense of peace and purpose, a guiding principle for the years ahead. He also spoke about the courage it took for the person to act in such a selfless way. In a world often driven by recognition and reward, it was rare to see someone prioritize kindness over public acclaim. Keanu admired this courage deeply, realizing that it required both strength and humility to do what was right without seeking approval. The lesson was clear: integrity and empathy were the true measures of greatness, far beyond what awards, praise, or public attention could offer. As the interview drew to a close, Keanu emphasized that the story was not about the individual's fame or position. It was about the human qualities that had inspired him: humility, compassion, and selflessness. He encouraged viewers to look for similar opportunities in their own lives, to act with kindness quietly, and to understand the profound effects such actions could have on others. His message was simple, yet powerful: the impact of one thoughtful act could ripple far beyond what anyone might imagine. After the broadcast, the story began to spread rapidly. Social media platforms were filled with discussions about Keanu's revelation. People praised him for sharing such a personal experience, expressing admiration for the courage and empathy he had witnessed. Some viewers reflected on their own lives, thinking about moments when they had witnessed or participated in quiet acts of kindness. The story inspired conversations about leadership, morality, and the power of unseen good deeds. For Keanu, the response was not the important part. The real significance lay in the lesson he had learned and the changes it had inspired within himself. He continued to live with the principles he had observed, striving to act with empathy and integrity in all aspects of life. Whether helping a colleague, supporting a friend, or interacting with strangers, he carried the memory of that extraordinary act and the quiet wisdom it had shared. In the weeks that followed, the story became a source of reflection for many people. Fans wrote letters and messages thanking Keanu for sharing the lesson, expressing how it had inspired them to act more thoughtfully in their own lives. Teachers, leaders, and ordinary individuals alike discussed the importance of humility and quiet compassion, showing that the ripple effect of a single story could reach far and wide. Keanu's revelation had become more than just a personal experience; it had become a universal reminder of the enduring power of kindness. Even in his daily life, Keanu felt the impact of the encounter every day. He approached interactions with renewed awareness, focusing on listening, understanding, and helping where he could. The experience had reshaped not only how he viewed others, but how he viewed himself. He felt a deeper sense of responsibility to act with integrity, to be present in the moment, and to make choices guided by empathy rather than recognition. By sharing the story publicly, Keanu had not only honored the selfless act he had witnessed, but he had also given the world a glimpse into the kind of person he aspired to be. He showed that even in a world full of attention and noise, the quiet, thoughtful actions of individuals could inspire others, create lasting change, and leave a legacy far more meaningful than fame or fortune. The moment Keanu Reeves shared the story of the quiet, selfless act during the live interview, the reaction was immediate and intense. Social media lit up with comments, posts, and videos of the interview clip. People all over the world were amazed, inspired, and moved by what he had revealed. Many viewers praised Keanu not just for his honesty, but for his choice to shine a light on humility, kindness, and empathy. The story touched people in a way that went beyond celebrity gossip. It was about human values that anyone could understand and appreciate. News outlets quickly picked up the interview. Articles appeared online within hours, highlighting Keanu's revelation. The headlines focused on the surprising details, emphasizing both the selflessness of the act and Keanu's courage to share it publicly. People who had never followed Keanu's career closely began paying attention, curious about the man whose words had captured hearts around the world. Television programs replayed segments of the interview, with commentators discussing the significance of quiet kindness in a society often focused on fame, recognition, and achievement. The reaction was not limited to media attention. Ordinary people shared their own stories online, inspired by what they had heard. Some wrote about moments when someone had helped them quietly, without expecting recognition. Others shared personal reflections, thinking about how they could incorporate more empathy and humility into their own lives. The story created a wave of conversation about human values, leadership, and the importance of caring for others, even when no one is watching. It became a reminder that small, thoughtful actions could have a profound and lasting effect. Keanu himself observed the reaction quietly. He did not seek the attention or praise, but he noticed how deeply people were responding. Fans posted messages thanking him for sharing the story, describing how it had inspired them to be more considerate, compassionate, and aware of the needs of others. Teachers mentioned using the story to discuss values with their students. Leaders in business and community organizations cited it as an example of ethical influence. Even celebrities and public figures commented on how remarkable it was to see someone in a position of fame emphasizing quiet, meaningful acts of kindness. The response was worldwide. People in different countries translated the story into their own languages, sharing it on social media platforms. News channels in Europe, Asia, and the Americas covered the interview, and the story became a trending topic online. Individuals who had never paid attention to celebrity news began following Keanu's public appearances, curious about the person behind the words. They admired his humility and integrity, recognizing that his choice to speak honestly about the encounter reflected both courage and character. Meanwhile, discussion forums and online communities exploded with thoughtful conversations. People debated what it meant to act selflessly, and how individuals could make a difference in their daily lives. Some shared personal experiences, stories of quiet heroes who had helped them or inspired them to be better. Others reflected on the contrast between public recognition and private action, acknowledging that often the most meaningful contributions are unseen. Keanu's story became a catalyst for reflection, dialogue, and a renewed appreciation for simple, authentic acts of kindness. Television talk shows invited Keanu to appear again, curious about his perspective and the impact of the story. He approached each invitation with the same humility as before, speaking calmly and thoughtfully about the lessons he had learned. The message remained the same: greatness is not measured by fame or recognition, but by the quiet, meaningful ways people make a difference in the lives of others. Audiences appreciated his sincerity, as it reminded them that even in a world dominated by publicity and attention, human values like empathy and integrity remained powerful and relevant. As the story continued to spread, educators, community leaders, and organizations began using it as an example for teaching values and ethics. Schools held discussions about empathy, integrity, and humility, inspired by Keanu's experience. Social groups and volunteer organizations cited the story to encourage community service and support for others. The story resonated across generations, reaching young people learning about role models, as well as adults reflecting on their own actions and influence. It became more than just a celebrity story, it became a lesson about humanity and the potential everyone has to make a difference. The impact of the story also reached those in positions of leadership. Executives, politicians, and community leaders commented on the importance of ethical influence. Many reflected on the power of quiet, thoughtful acts rather than seeking recognition or headlines. Keanu's revelation highlighted a principle that was often overlooked: true leadership is not about being seen, but about creating positive change in ways that may never be noticed. Leaders began rethinking how they approached decision-making, understanding that subtle, compassionate actions could have lasting effects on those they served. In addition to the public reaction, Keanu noticed private responses from those close to him. Friends and family expressed pride not because of attention, but because they recognized the sincerity behind his words. They admired his ability to share a personal experience in a way that inspired millions, without turning it into a self-promotional act. Keanu valued their support and quiet encouragement, knowing that it reflected the values he had tried to uphold throughout his life. The story even inspired creative works. Writers, artists, and filmmakers referenced the interview as an example of meaningful storytelling. Some created artwork that depicted the themes of humility and quiet kindness. Others wrote essays, blog posts, and opinion pieces reflecting on how the story encouraged reflection on human values. Social media challenges emerged, encouraging people to share acts of kindness they had performed or witnessed, all sparked by Keanu's decision to tell the story. Yet, amid all the attention and discussion, Keanu remained grounded. He continued his daily life with the same quiet dedication to empathy and integrity as before. He did not seek further recognition or accolades. The attention the story received was not the purpose, the lesson and its ripple effect were what mattered. He wanted people to understand that anyone, regardless of position or fame, could make a meaningful difference in the lives of others through small, thoughtful actions. The interview also led to conversations about the challenges of living with humility in a world focused on visibility and popularity. Experts, commentators, and viewers discussed how difficult it can be to act selflessly when the pressure to be noticed is so high. Keanu's story became a reminder that true courage is often quiet, that meaningful impact is sometimes hidden, and that everyone has the potential to influence others positively without seeking recognition. As weeks turned into months, the story continued to inspire. People shared follow-up stories online, describing how Keanu's interview had prompted them to act with more thoughtfulness and care. Volunteers reported increased participation in charitable activities. Teachers and parents used the story to teach lessons about empathy and responsibility. The ripple effect of one quiet revelation had reached far beyond the television studio where it was first shared. In every corner of the world, Keanu's story reminded people of the power of kindness, integrity, and humility. It became a benchmark for meaningful action and thoughtful behavior. People realized that impact was not measured in headlines, awards, or fame, but in the subtle ways people touch each other's lives. Keanu had not only revealed a story of quiet heroism, but he had also inspired a movement of reflection, empathy, and responsible action. Through it all, Keanu maintained his calm and thoughtful demeanor. He observed the conversations, the articles, the social media posts, and the discussions without becoming distracted or prideful. He knew that the story's power lay not in the attention it received, but in the lessons it conveyed and the inspiration it created. His goal had always been to encourage reflection, understanding, and meaningful action, and the response showed that even a small act of honesty could spark enormous impact. As the months passed, the story remained a point of reference in discussions about leadership, compassion, and ethical influence. It was cited in classrooms, community programs, and leadership seminars as a reminder of the profound effect of unseen kindness. Keanu's revelation became more than an interview moment, it became a lasting lesson for millions of people around the world. It reminded them that even small gestures, quiet interventions, and personal acts of empathy could create ripples that extended far beyond immediate perception. The media frenzy, public discussions, and global conversation all served to highlight one key lesson: the world needs more acts of quiet kindness and selfless service. Keanu's story was a reminder that these acts do not need to be celebrated or rewarded publicly to be meaningful. Their true value lies in the effect they have on people's lives and the inspiration they provide for others to act similarly. Even as attention gradually shifted to other news, the lesson endured. Individuals who had been touched by the story continued to reflect, act, and share, carrying forward the quiet message of empathy, humility, and integrity. Keanu's revelation, though shared in a single interview, created an ongoing ripple effect, a testament to the enduring power of honesty, compassion, and the courage to reveal a truth that inspires others to be better. After the world reacted to Keanu Reeves' revelation, he began to reflect more deeply on why he had chosen to share the story publicly. It was not for fame, attention, or approval. It was because he believed that the lessons he had learned were too valuable to keep to himself. The experience had changed him profoundly, shaping the way he viewed kindness, leadership, and the way people could influence one another quietly but meaningfully. By telling the story, he hoped to inspire others to act with empathy, integrity, and selflessness in their own lives. Keanu often thought about the ripple effect of the story. He remembered messages from fans, emails from students, and letters from ordinary people who had been inspired by his words. Many wrote that the story had encouraged them to act more thoughtfully, to pay attention to the small ways they could help others, and to recognize that even private acts of kindness mattered. Teachers and mentors shared how they used the story to teach lessons about values, empathy, and responsibility. Keanu realized that the impact of one honest account could extend far beyond what he had imagined, reaching people of all ages and backgrounds. In his daily life, Keanu began to notice the subtle ways the lessons had shaped him. He became more attentive in conversations, listening not just to respond but to understand. He noticed opportunities to help in small, meaningful ways, whether it was offering a comforting word to someone having a difficult day, giving guidance to a younger colleague, or simply showing appreciation for others' efforts. He recognized that these small gestures, while seemingly insignificant, could leave a lasting impression on those around him. Keanu also reflected on the courage it had taken for the person in his story to act selflessly. In a world where recognition and applause often drive behavior, it was rare to see someone prioritize humanity over visibility. Their quiet intervention had prevented a difficult situation from escalating and had done so without any expectation of praise. Keanu realized that such courage was extraordinary precisely because it was ordinary in appearance. It did not call attention to itself but had a profound effect. It was a lesson he wanted others to understand, that meaningful impact often comes in the simplest forms, performed quietly and consistently. Sharing the story publicly had another effect as well. It gave people a way to discuss important values in an accessible and relatable manner. Across social media, classrooms, workplaces, and families, people began conversations about humility, empathy, and quiet leadership. Some debated how they could incorporate these lessons into their own lives, while others reflected on moments when they or someone they knew had performed similar acts of kindness without recognition. Keanu's story became a reference point, a model for understanding how small, intentional actions could make the world a better place. Even as the media attention gradually calmed, the influence of the story persisted. Keanu received messages from people inspired to volunteer, to help a neighbor, or to support someone going through a difficult time. These acts, while small, represented the continuing ripple effect of his decision to share the experience. Keanu understood that while fame might fade, the impact of shared lessons and human values could endure indefinitely, affecting countless lives in ways no one could fully measure. Keanu also reflected on the personal growth he experienced because of the meeting. It had changed how he viewed himself, his responsibilities, and the influence he held as a public figure. He realized that being known for fame or success was secondary to the real influence one could have through empathy, integrity, and selflessness. It was a reminder that anyone, regardless of their position or public recognition, could make meaningful contributions by living according to these values. In interviews and public appearances following the revelation, Keanu continued to emphasize these principles. He spoke not about himself, but about the lessons he had learned and the ways they could apply to anyone's life. He encouraged audiences to recognize opportunities for kindness and integrity in everyday situations, and to understand that even quiet actions could inspire change. He made it clear that the goal was not recognition, but the genuine effort to make a positive difference. The story also inspired leaders in various fields. Educators, business executives, community organizers, and public figures used it as an example of ethical influence and leadership. They discussed how the principles Keanu highlighted, humility, empathy, and quiet action, were essential in creating lasting, meaningful change. The story became a tool for teaching and reflection, showing that leadership and influence were not about being the loudest voice or seeking attention, but about acting with integrity and care, even when no one else noticed. Keanu noticed that the story had a personal effect on many individuals. People shared anecdotes of times when they had been inspired to act kindly or ethically because of his account. They described helping strangers, supporting friends, or simply being more present in their interactions with others. These small acts, inspired by his story, created a chain of positivity, proving that one thoughtful revelation could ignite a broader cultural reflection on kindness and empathy. Despite all the attention, Keanu remained grounded. He continued his daily life as quietly and thoughtfully as before. The interviews and media coverage were not his goal. The story itself and the lessons it conveyed were what mattered most. He stayed committed to living by the principles he admired, acting with compassion, humility, and integrity in every interaction. Every decision, every gesture, became an opportunity to embody the values he had learned, and to quietly inspire others by example. Over time, the story became more than just a personal anecdote. It evolved into a symbol of quiet heroism and meaningful action. People began to view Keanu not only as an actor but as a person who embodied the values of empathy and integrity. The story encouraged reflection, discussion, and a deeper understanding of what it meant to live a good life. It reminded people that even small, unnoticed actions could have a profound effect, and that everyone has the ability to create positive change in ways both visible and invisible. Keanu also thought about the future. He hoped that the story would continue to inspire people long after the initial attention faded. He wanted others to remember that quiet, thoughtful actions could create lasting impact, that integrity and empathy were more powerful than recognition, and that every individual had the ability to influence the world positively. By sharing his experience, he had given others permission to value humility, compassion, and meaningful action over fame and applause. Reflecting on the journey, Keanu realized that the story had not only impacted others, but had also shaped his own life. He had grown more aware, more patient, and more mindful of the subtle ways he could make a difference. The lessons of empathy, humility, and quiet courage had become guiding principles for his personal and professional life. He understood that influence was not about public recognition, but about the enduring effect of actions rooted in integrity and care. As he continued his work, his personal encounters, and his interactions with fans, Keanu carried these principles with him. Every gesture of kindness, every act of empathy, every moment of quiet support reflected the lessons he had learned from that extraordinary meeting. He became not just a storyteller, but a living example of the power of humility and selfless action. His life and the story he shared served as a lasting reminder that the world is shaped not only by what is visible, but by the quiet, thoughtful actions that ripple outward in ways we may never fully see. In the end, Keanu Reeves' decision to share the story publicly left a lasting legacy. It inspired people to act with empathy, reflect on their values, and recognize the quiet power of kindness. It encouraged discussions about integrity, humility, and leadership in ways that transcended fame or celebrity culture. And for Keanu, it reinforced a simple truth: the most meaningful impact comes not from being seen or praised, but from acting with care, compassion, and humanity. Through this story, the audience learned a profound lesson about the enduring power of small, thoughtful acts. They realized that everyone has the capacity to influence others positively, whether in private moments or public spaces. Keanu's revelation became more than an interview. It became a movement of reflection, empathy, and integrity, inspiring countless individuals to act with kindness, humility, and courage in their own lives. And so, the story concluded not with fanfare or applause, but with quiet reflection. It was a story that lived in the hearts of those who heard it, reminding everyone that the world is shaped by acts of compassion and the courage to do what is right, even when no one is watching. Keanu Reeves' story had become a lasting beacon of humanity, inspiring people everywhere to act with empathy, integrity, and selfless courage in the way they lived their lives.